Hey everybody, for this lecture we are talking about style. We are talking about how you choose the words that come out of your mouth so that they have panache, so that they're interesting. And we're doing this for speech 4 because you needed to learn the basic mechanics first, right? You needed to learn how to stand up straight, look people in the eye, talk to them, and make whatever you're saying come across in an organization that makes it sound like it makes sense. You needed your ethos, pathos, and logos. But now that you have those, what we're going to do is talk about making your words pretty, making your words enticing, easy to listen to. We kind of foreshadowed this at the beginning of the semester when we did our fun thing with the animal sounds and the automatopoeias, and yeah. So you already know that sounds and different groupings of words have a capacity to give us this visceral, almost poetic reaction to what a person is saying. And I want you to be able to choose your words carefully for a speech in particular to make people have a good, an aesthetically pleasing reaction to what you're saying. So, talking about style means we have to recognize first and foremost something that is a particular area of interest when you're writing a scripted speech like you are. Don't you hate, you've been on Zoom, right? You've all been on Zoom. Don't you hate it when you're on Zoom and you noticed your hair looks like shit or something and you're just like, oh my God, do I fix it? Everybody can see me fixing it. But at the same time, you don't want to sit there and look at yourself looking like shit. It's a dilemma. Anyway, the thing to remember about scripted speech writing is first and foremost, and I'm going to pause so you can repeat this after me. A speech is not an essay. A speech is not an essay. Say it with me on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Good. For those of you that did it, good. For those of you that did not do it, I hope you thought it real hard. I feel like I'm like on Blue's Clues or Dora right now, but that's okay. So if you try to write a speech like an essay, if you try to sit down and you're just like, doop, 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 this is what I'm going to say, you're going to end up with a shitty speech. And you're going to do that because writing sentence structures for an essay is entirely different than writing sentence structures and making word choices for a speech. So here's a few ways that you need to make sure that the sentences you write in a scripted speech are very distinctly different than the way you'd write them if you were writing an essay. First, a speech has to have shorter sentences than an essay, because in an essay, especially if you're going for that real academic tone of writing, you're going to have very complex sentences that have things like semicolons and dashes and parentheses. And the problem with all of those very interesting additions to your writing is that the audience can't hear them, can they? If you have a dash that connects you to another sentence, or if you have a set of parentheses that puts a really long clause at the end of an already really long sentence, you're going to run out of breath, frankly. You've heard that. Yeah, you've heard that when people are giving speeches and all of a sudden, and you think they're just suddenly asphyxiating or something. Don't let yourself do that. Write very short, very simple sentences. I went to the store. This is a good thing. And then you can breathe naturally and it won't sound like you're reading an essay instead of reading a speech. You also want to make sure you have active verbs. Never ever use passive voice in a speech. It makes you sound stuffy. It makes you sound like you think you're better than everybody else. It's not a good look. If you're confused about the difference between active and passive voices, an active sentence is where you can tell who did the thing, who is doing the verb. In a passive sentence, it's a mystery. You can't tell who is doing the verb. To give you a couple of examples, an active sentence would be, I tracked mud into the house. Do you see? You can tell who did the tracking. It was me. If I were being more circumspect, I would say something like, mud was tracked into the house. Yeah, then we have no idea who did the tracking. We just know the mud is there. So don't do that latter of the things. People are most tempted to use passive voice when they're talking about something that they want to sound really like scientific about. Studies were done. Doesn't that have an air of authority? Studies were done. And doesn't that sound fucking annoying? Because you're sitting there like, well, who did the studies? Like, what's going on? Were they credible people? I don't know. What are these studies about? So don't use passive voice in a speech. At least in an essay, if you use it, people can go look up the studies that were done and figure things out, but in a speech, they can't. So don't put them in that position. Okay. Also, when you are writing a speech as opposed to an essay, you really want to think about interesting linguistic twists, which, by the way, is why you're doing the readings that you're doing this week, because those twists are something that I would like for you to include in your speech, as well as the other rhetorical devices that you read about, for example, in the Speech 3 unit. So think about doing things like playing with parallel sentence structures, like including repetition. And if you want a really good example of this, watch John F. Kennedy in that very famous speech where he keeps saying, ask not, over and over and over again. Yeah, you know this speech. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. My fellow citizens of the world, ask not what America can do for you, ask what together we can do for the freedom of man. Yeah, it's all very, profound sounding, but the repetition, the ask and the ask not, ask not, and the parallel sentence structures that those create are memorable. They're more memorable than if you had a bunch of sentences that didn't remind you of each other. You hear this in a lot of artifacts from oral cultures, from a lot of poems and things that were developed before people could write things down. They're good speech-making tools because they help people remember what you said, and they make it more interesting to listen to. So do stuff like that. Do them in your speeches, and I can guarantee you that people will listen. That's just what we're wired to be interested in. So definitely do that. Also, think about things like word choice. And that's very important here, particularly because I have given you a challenge, which is talk about something boring or undesirable as if it were inspirational. And that means that you have to choose your language about the thing very carefully, so we appreciate that it could be seen as undesirable, but we also appreciate that it does have its good qualities. So you gotta kind of walk the line between connotation and denotation. I'm sure you're familiar with this from high school English, but just for a quick recap, connotation is the way that we use a word colloquially, a way that you would use a word every day. Whereas denotation is the way a dictionary would tell you to use the word. And a lot of the times, those two definitions coincide, but at the same time, when they diverge, they really diverge, yeah? A classic example of this is gay, although I think the dictionary's been updated to account for the colloquialism, but still, you would normally say gay to indicate that someone is homosexual, or that if you're using the really connotative version of the word, to indicate that you don't like something. Now, by the way, that's not a nice thing to do, to take a group of people and make them a synonym for bad. So keep that in mind. But that's the colloquial meaning of gay. At the same time, the dictionary says gay means what? Happy. Yeah, that's why we deck the halls with gay apparel, and that has nothing to do with anything that you might stereotypically call gay clothes. So, connotation and denotation. The issue is connotative terms tend to be judgy, yeah? Like, if you say gay like happy, then there's really no emotion behind that. But if you say that's gay, then you're clearly passing judgment on the thing. The same with something like lit. The denotative meaning of lit is possibly something like it's on fire. Connotatively, lit means that's amazing and I really like it, yeah? There's always some kind of value judgment with connotative terms, and that means you have to be very careful using them, because if you get up and start talking about something in your speech and it sounds like you really like it or you really hate it, that doesn't give you the objectivity to talk about it in an inspirational way. But at the same time, if you use strictly denotative words or usages of words, then people are going to walk out thinking that you have no emotions, that you don't care, and you don't want that either. So when you're making word choice decisions, pick something that's in the middle. Pick something that people would hear it and be like, I get that you like this thing, but you're also not like losing your mind about it. I can get on board with this speech. So play around with your words and make sure you're not being too connotative, but also make sure you're not being too denotative. Because you don't want to sound over emotional and you don't want to sound like you don't care. Yeah, do you see what I'm saying? Make those decisions. Now, here's your extra credit Easter egg for this week, and this one's a little more complicated, so I will give you 4 points of extra credit for doing it. Extra credit is, I want you to find something in your house, something on your desk, something in your room, and I want you to just pick it up, find a value that it might have that could inspire other people, and send me the name of the object, the value, and finally tell me 2 or 3 things about it that show that value. Yeah, so if I just randomly pull up this hand sanitizer, hello, its name is Bill, then I could come up with, hand sanitizer is very... Hand sanitizer is very caring. Hand sanitizer, for example, does not mind that you are using it up to promote your own health. Hand sanitizer is there for you. And you know what else about hand sanitizer? Hand sanitizer is willing to embarrass itself because it knows it smells funny, and yet it is still willing to let you expose its funny-ass smell around other people because it just wants you to be healthy. Hand sanitizer is caring, just like you should be. Yeah? Do that with an object. You can make a video if you really want to go above and beyond, or you can just send me an email with the text, and then extra credit is coming your way. So I hope to hear that from a bunch of you guys, and again, any questions you have about this speech, please be sending them my way or letting me give you feedback or whatever it is you need. I'm here. I hope you all have fun with this. All right. Bye.